The emergency room of Hargrove Memorial Hospital had seen its share of chaos on a Saturday night, but the particular silence that fell over the main lobby at 9:47 p.m. was a different kind entirely, the kind that happens when everyone in a room simultaneously realizes they are witnessing something deeply, fundamentally wrong. Colonel Beatrice Osiadinkra had been sitting quietly in the third row of plastic waiting room chairs for the past 22 minutes, her hands folded in her lap, her posture precisely upright, in the way that 4 decades of military service carves permanently into a person's spine. She was 61 years old, dressed in a simple navy blazer and pressed slacks, her silver-streaked locks pulled back from a face that had negotiated prisoner exchanges in Kandahar, briefed 3 consecutive secretaries of defense, and once stared down a room full of hostile Senate Armed Services Committee members without so much as blinking. Tonight, however, she was simply a grandmother. Her daughter had called 40 minutes ago from this very hospital, voice trembling, saying the baby was coming early. Beatrice had driven here from across town, still wearing her reading glasses, her half-finished cup of chamomile tea left cooling on the kitchen counter. She had checked in at the front desk, given her daughter's name, Janelle Adinkra Webb, maternity ward, 3rd floor, and been told politely to wait while the staff confirmed the room number. That was 22 minutes ago. Beatrice had waited. She was exceptional at waiting. Patience, in her experience, was simply discipline applied to time. What she had not anticipated was Security Officer Leonard Pruett. Pruett was a broad man, going soft around the middle, his uniform shirt straining slightly at the buttons, his expression carrying the permanent sourness of someone who had expected a different life and was now taking it out on anyone within reach. He had been working the Hargrove Memorial night shift for 6 years, long enough to develop a precise internal map of who belonged in his hospital and who he felt did not. He spotted Beatrice from across the lobby. He took his time walking over, the kind of deliberate slowness that was meant to communicate authority before a single word was spoken. "Ma'am." He stopped directly in front of her, planting his feet wide. "I'm going to need you to show me some identification and tell me why you're here." Beatrice looked up from the magazine she had not actually been reading. Her expression did not change. "Good evening," she said. "My daughter is a patient on the maternity ward. I was told to wait while the desk confirmed her room." "Which desk told you that?" "The admissions desk. The young woman with the red lanyard." Pruett glanced toward the front desk, where the admissions clerk, a woman named Adeze, who had been watching this unfold with visible unease, quickly looked back down at her computer screen. "I'm going to need to see your ID," Pruett said again. Beatrice studied him for a brief, measured moment. "May I ask why? I've checked in. I'm waiting as instructed." "I haven't moved from this chair. Hospital policy," Pruett said. "Unaccompanied visitors in the waiting area after 9 p.m. need to verify their purpose." "I just explained my purpose." "I need documentation." There was a couple 3 seats down, white, middle-aged, the man in a Golf scrolling her phone, who had been waiting for at least as long as Beatrice. Pruett had not approached them. Beatrice noted this with the same calm, cataloguing precision she had once used to assess ambush terrain in the Helmand province. She reached into her purse and produced her driver's license. Pruett took it, looked at it, handed it back without really reading it. "What's the patient's name?" "Janelle Adinkra Webb. Relationship." "She is my daughter." "We can't confirm patient information to visitors without." "The admissions clerk already confirmed it," Beatrice said, her voice remaining perfectly even. "She is confirming the room number. I was asked to wait. I am waiting. I am not a visitor who has wandered in off the street, officer. I am a mother whose daughter is in labor upstairs. I would appreciate it if you allowed me to continue waiting in peace." Something shifted in Pruett's expression, not embarrassment, not reconsideration. Something harder, the particular resentment of a man who has been answered back calmly and finds the calm itself offensive. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to come with me to the security office so we can sort this out properly." The lobby, which had been filled with the low ambient noise of a hospital night, the squeak of rubber soles on linoleum, the distant beeping of elevator buttons, the muted television, tuned to a local news channel, went noticeably quieter. Beatrice did not stand up. "Am I being detained? This is a private facility. We have the right to ask." "Am I being detained?" she repeated. "Or are you asking me to accompany you voluntarily?" Pruett's jaw tightened. "I'm telling you, that if you don't cooperate, I can have you removed from the premises. On what grounds? Trespassing. Beatrice looked at him steadily. I checked in at the admissions desk 23 minutes ago. My name is in your system. The clerk confirmed my daughter is a patient here. You approached me, and only me, out of a waiting room that currently contains at least 11 other people who have been here longer than I have. She paused, letting that settle. I was a colonel in the United States Army for 38 years. I have been in rooms considerably more hostile than this one, and I have never once been asked to prove I belong somewhere, simply for sitting still. So I will ask you one more time, clearly. Am I being detained, or am I free to remain in this chair and wait for my daughter's nurse to come find me? Pruitt's hand moved to the radio clipped to his shoulder. I'm calling my supervisor. Please do, Beatrice said. He keyed the radio. This is Pruitt at the main lobby. I've got a situation. Need a supervisor down here. A burst of static, then that. 2 minutes, Pruitt. The couple in the golf shirts were now watching openly. So were 3 other people in the waiting room. A young man in scrubs, who had come through the lobby doors, had slowed his walk to nearly a stop, watching the exchange with an expression of quiet alarm. The admissions clerk, a Daisy, had picked up her desk phone, though it was not entirely clear who she was calling. The supervisor who arrived was a woman named Carol Hennessy, stocky and efficient, with the look of someone who had been dealing with Leonard Pruitt's particular brand of overzealousness for longer than she cared to count. She took one look at the situation. Beatrice, seated, composed, Pruitt, standing, puffed up, the rest of the lobby watching, and something in her expression went carefully neutral. What's the issue here, Leonard? Unverified visitor, post 9 p.m. Policy, she's being non-cooperative. She's sitting in a chair. She refused to come to the security office. Did she give you ID? Yes, but did she provide the patient's name? Pruitt's mouth tightened. Yes. Carol Hennessy turned to Beatrice. Ma'am, I apologize for the delay. I can walk you up to maternity myself if you'd like. I appreciate that, Beatrice said. I'll wait for the clerk to confirm the room, as originally arranged. I don't want to cause any disruption. You're not causing any disruption, Hennessy said, and there was something pointed in the way she said it. Pruitt opened his mouth. Before he could speak, the elevator at the far end of the lobby slid open with a soft chime, and 2 people stepped out, a young black man in his early 30s, wearing the rumpled, exhausted look of a man who had been awake for a very long time, and beside him, moving with the particular brisk energy of someone who has just received extraordinary news, a woman in green surgical scrubs. The young man was Marcus Adinkra Webb, Janelle's husband. He had been upstairs with his wife when Adaze had reached him by phone. The woman in scrubs was Dr. Philippa Osei Asante. She was 54 years old. She was also Beatrice's younger sister, and she was the chief of obstetrics at Hargrove Memorial. She had delivered over 4,000 babies in this building. Her name was on a plaque in the 3rd floor corridor. The hospital's new maternity wing expansion had been dedicated partly in her honor 18 months ago. She knew every nurse on the night shift by first name. She had also, in her capacity as a member of the hospital ethics board, filed more than one formal complaint regarding the conduct of security officer Leonard Pruitt. She crossed the lobby with the unhurried velocity of a woman who owned the floor she was walking on. B. She embraced her sister briefly, then straightened and turned to face Pruitt with an expression that could have stripped paint from the walls. Leonard. Pruitt went the particular shade of pale that only comes from suddenly understanding the full dimensions of a mistake you cannot walk back. Dr. Osei Asante, he said. His voice had lost approximately 60% of its volume. My sister, Philippa said, enunciating each word with terrifying precision. Checked in at your admissions desk 26 minutes ago. She provided her name, her relationship to the patient, and her identification when asked. She sat down quietly in a chair and waited exactly as instructed. She paused. Would you like to explain to me why she has instead spent those 26 minutes being questioned, threatened with removal, and treated like a trespasser in the hospital where I have worked for 21 years? I was following policy, Pruitt said. Post 9 p.m. Verification. The Hartley family, Philippa said, gesturing with one hand toward the couple in the golf shirts without breaking eye contact with Pruitt, has been sitting in that row since 8:45. I know because George Hartley's wife is my patient, and I personally checked on them when I came through earlier. Did you ask them for identification? Pruitt said nothing. The answer is no, Philippa said. I know it's no, because I was standing near the elevator bank when you walked past them to reach my sister. She let the silence hold for exactly 3 seconds. I have been documenting Leonard Pruett's conduct at this hospital for 2 years. I have filed 3 formal ethics board complaints. Each time, the matter was reviewed and closed at the departmental level. Tonight, I want something different. She turned to Carol Hennessy. Carol, I want this incident documented in full. I want timestamps. I want the lobby security footage pulled and preserved. And I want a formal written account from every member of staff who witnessed this interaction. Hennessy had been quiet throughout this. Now she said, "Consider it done, Dr. Osei Asante." Philippa turned back to Pruett. "You are going to step back, Leonard. You are going to let my sister go upstairs to meet her granddaughter. Because Jonelle delivered 11 minutes ago, and everyone is healthy, and it is a beautiful night, despite your bare efforts to ruin it, and then you and I are going to have a very different kind of conversation in the morning." Marcus stepped forward, touching Beatrice's arm gently. "Mom, she's here, she's perfect. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Jonelle's asking for you." For the first time since Pruett had approached her, something shifted in Beatrice's expression. The composed, careful stillness softened into something that had nothing to do with discipline or rank, or the careful management of a difficult situation. She stood up, straightened her blazer, picked up her purse. She looked at Pruett one last time. There was no triumph in her face, just the quiet, absolute clarity of a woman who had spent 4 decades watching poorly chosen battles end the same way. "Congratulations on your granddaughter," Pruett said, because he apparently had nothing left but the reflexive performance of civility. Beatrice did not respond. She walked to the elevator with her son-in-law and her sister. The lobby resumed breathing. The formal documentation that Carol Hennessy compiled that night was thorough in a way that suggested she had been waiting a long time to compile it. 12 minutes of lobby security footage, timestamps of Pruett's interaction with Beatrice cross-referenced against the arrivals log, showing the Hartley couple, a Mr. Dennis Aldridge, and 2 other single visitors who had checked in before Beatrice and received no similar inquiry. Signed statements from a days at the admissions desk and from the young man in scrubs, a resident named Dr. Thomas Ayu, who had slowed in the lobby doorway and witnessed the exchange from arrival to conclusion. Hennessy filed the report with the hospital's Human Resources Office at 11:22 p.m. She emailed a copy to Dr. Osei Asante. She emailed another copy to the hospital's chief operating officer, a meticulous administrator named Janet Cromwell, who read it on her phone at 6:04 the following morning and called Dr. Osei Asante before her coffee was finished. Philippa had expected to make the case herself at a Monday morning ethics board session. She did not need to. At 9:15 Monday morning, Leonard Pruett was called into a meeting he had not been invited to schedule. Present in the conference room on the 2nd floor of the administrative wing were Janet Cromwell, Carol Hennessy, a representative from the hospital's legal counsel named Gerald Ashby, and Pruett noticed with the delayed nausea of someone understanding a punchline too late, a woman in a tailored charcoal blazer whom he did not recognize, but who had the particular quality of stillness that makes a room feel smaller. Her name was Deputy Director Claudette Fontaine Osei. She was with the Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. She was in the building because Hargrove Memorial received federal Medicare and Medicaid funding, and any credible allegation of racially discriminatory treatment of patients or patient families within a federally funded facility fell squarely within her office's jurisdiction. She had driven from the regional office that morning because Janet Cromwell was not the kind of administrator who waited to see which way the wind was blowing. She had called the OCR regional office at 6:17 a.m. Pruett sat down. He looked at the faces around the table and understood, with the slow, cold clarity of a man watching a door lock behind him, that there was no version of this meeting that ended with a letter of reprimand and mandatory sensitivity training. Gerald Ashby opened a folder. "Mr. Pruett, we're here to discuss the events of Saturday evening in the main lobby. Specifically, your interaction with Ms. Beatrice Osei Adinkra between approximately 9:25 and 9:51 p.m. Colonel," Philippa said from the far end of the table, her voice entirely pleasant. "Colonel Beatrice Osei Adinkra, retired, United States Army, 38 years of service, former Deputy Commanding General, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command." There was a particular quality to the silence that followed. Pruett had not known that part. He had seen a black woman sitting alone in a waiting room after 9 p.m. and made a series of rapid, automatic assessments, none of which had included the possibility that the woman he was approaching had once overseen intelligence operations across 3 combat theaters and reported directly to the Army Chief of Staff. "I was following post-9 p.m. protocol," Pruett said. "We pulled your activity logs for the past 60 days, Hennessy said, sliding a printed sheet across the table. "Protocol verification requests after 9 p.m., broken down by date and description of visitor. We found 27 instances." She paused. 24 of those 27 individuals were black or Latino. Pruett looked at the sheet. He did not pick it up. "The 3 exceptions," Hennessy continued, "were a young white man who was visibly agitated and pacing near the exit, which constitutes a genuine behavioral flag, and 2 people who were approached because they had already been directed to the security desk by admissions staff." She folded her hands. "You did not approach the Hartley couple on Saturday. You did not approach Mr. Aldridge. You walked directly to Colonel Osi Adinkra, who was sitting quietly in the 3rd row reading a magazine." Deputy Director Fontaine Osi had not spoken yet. She spoke now. "Mr. Pruett, under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, any entity receiving federal financial assistance, which includes this hospital, is prohibited from discriminating on the basis of race in any program or activity. The pattern documented in these logs, combined with the specific circumstances of Saturday evening, constitutes a prima facie case of discriminatory enforcement." She looked at him with the calm efficiency of someone delivering a weather report. "My office will be opening a formal compliance review of this institution. That review will examine hiring practices, security protocols, incident reports, and complaint history going back 5 years. It will also examine the prior complaints filed against you specifically, 3 of which, I understand, were closed at the departmental level without escalation." The union representative, who had been sitting quietly in the corner chair, a man named Paul Grover who had, in 6 years of working with Pruett, learned to recognize the particular expression now on his face, shifted in his seat, and said nothing. There were things the union fought and things the union stepped back from, and a federal civil rights review with a documented 60-day pattern log was firmly in the 2nd category. "The hospital's position," Janet Cromwell said, "is as follows. Effective today, Leonard Pruett's employment at Hargrove Memorial is terminated. We are additionally commissioning an independent review of our security protocols to ensure that no patient, family member, or visitor is subjected to discriminatory treatment of any kind. We will be cooperating fully with Deputy Director Fontaine Osi's office." She paused. "And we will be reaching out to Colonel Osi Adinkra directly to offer a formal apology on behalf of this institution." Pruett looked at the table. His radio, the one he would surrender on the way out, sat clipped to his belt where it always was. It felt, in that moment, extraordinarily heavy. "You want to know the worst part, Leonard?" Carol Hennessy said, and her voice had none of the professional neutrality of the past 15 minutes, just the flat exhaustion of a woman who had watched this particular dynamic play out too many times. She sat there for 23 minutes, without saying a word to anyone. She didn't complain. She didn't demand to speak to someone. She just waited, like she was asked to, because she is the kind of person who does what she's asked to do, and trusts that the system is going to work. She picked up the activity log and squared it against the table edge. "And you walked past 11 other people to prove her wrong." 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon that smelled like early autumn and fresh institutional paint, Beatrice Osi Adinkra sat in the newly renovated family waiting lounge on the 3rd floor of Hargrove Memorial's maternity wing. The chair was considerably more comfortable than the one in the main lobby. Through the window to her left, she could see a strip of bright Virginia sky. In her arms, wrapped in a yellow blanket, was her granddaughter, 8 days old, and profoundly unimpressed by the weight of everything that had happened around her arrival. Jonelle was asleep in the next room. Marcus had gone to find coffee. Philippa had stopped by an hour ago, on her rounds, and stayed for 20 minutes longer than she planned, because the baby had wrapped one impossibly small hand around her finger and refused to let go. A member of the hospital's patient relations team had come by the previous week with a formal letter from Janet Cromwell, a personal phone call from the board chair, and an offer that Beatrice had not asked for, and did not particularly need, but accepted with grace, because the intent behind it was genuine. She had also received a call from Deputy Director Fontaine Osei, who informed her that the compliance review had identified 3 additional patterns of concern beyond Pruett's individual conduct, and that the hospital had entered into a formal corrective agreement with the OCR. The review had also, quietly and without fanfare, resulted in the review of 2 other security personnel whose incident logs had shown similar patterns. 14 people, in the end, not just Pruett. Beatrice looked down at her granddaughter's face, the perfect compact frown of a sleeping infant who had not yet decided whether the world deserved her attention. She thought about what she had told the Congressional Subcommittee 17 years ago, in testimony that had gone on for 6 hours and resulted in a significant reform of Army intelligence oversight protocols. She had been asked by a senator from Kentucky, not unkindly, but with the particular obliviousness of a man who had never had to consider it, whether she ever found it exhausting, having to prove herself in rooms that had not originally been designed for her. She had thought about the question for 3 full seconds before answering. "Senator," she had said, "I've been proving myself in rooms like that my whole career. The difference is that now, when I walk into one, I'm usually the one running it." The baby made a small sound that might have been a complaint and might have been a comment on the general situation. Beatrice adjusted her hold, and the sound stopped. Outside in the corridor, the hospital went about its work, the clatter of a supply cart, the distant 3-tone chime of an announcement, the murmur of a family being given good news by someone who clearly meant it. Ordinary sounds, the sounds of a place that was trying, imperfectly and with some difficulty, to be what it was supposed to be. Beatrice held her granddaughter and let the afternoon light come through the window and thought that it was, despite everything, a very good day to be here. Some people put on a uniform, whether it's a badge or a security vest, or any marker of authority they didn't earn through character, and they forget that the weight of it is borrowed. They forget that the power vested in them by an institution is contingent on them wielding it honestly. Rude Pruett spent 6 years walking past the people he was supposed to protect and targeting the ones he had decided, without evidence and without conscience, were easier to push around. He thought the system would protect him the way it always had. What he did not account for was a woman who had spent 38 years learning exactly how systems work and exactly how to make them correct themselves. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that quiet dignity and hard-earned authority are not things that can be stripped away by someone with a radio and a bad attitude, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Echoes of Justice and stay with us. There are more stories where this one came from, and every single one of them ends the same way, with the scales, eventually, finding their balance.